Monday, December 17. Servant Leadership. During his ministry with his disciples, Jesus repeatedly experienced moments when he probably felt exasperated by the envy for power they seemed to have. The apostles appeared to be anxious to become powerful leaders of Jesus' kingdom. Let's read about that in Mark 9, verses 33 and 34. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. And Luke 9 and verse 46. An argument started among the disciples as to which of them would be the greatest. Even as the disciples were eating the Last Supper together, these feelings of domination and superiority were palpably felt among them. Luke 22 and verse 24. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. Question. During one such occasion, Jesus clearly expressed his thoughts regarding spiritual leadership among his people. What principles of leadership do we learn from Jesus' exhortation in Matthew chapter 20, verses 25 to 28? How can we manifest this principle in our lives and especially in our churches? Matthew 20, verses 25 to 28. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Professor Darius Jankowitz, a leading Adventist theologian, writes in Serving Like Jesus, Authority in God's Church, published in the Adventist Review, March 13, 2014, and on page 18. In this concise passage, Jesus presents us with two models of authority. The first is the Roman idea of authority. In this model, the elite stand hierarchically over others. They have the power to make decisions and expect submission from those below them. Jesus clearly rejected this model of authority when he stated, "Not so with you." Instead, he presented the disciples with a breathtakingly new model of authority, a thorough rejection or reversal of the hierarchical model with which they were familiar. End of quote. The concept of authority that Jesus presents in this story is based on two key words: servant, or diakonos, and slave, doulos. In some Bible versions, the first word servant is often translated minister, and the second servant or bondservant. Both words thus lose much of the force of Jesus' intent. Although Jesus did not wish to abolish all authority structures, what he wished to emphasize is that church leaders must first of all be servants and slaves of God's people. Their positions are not to exercise authority over people or to dominate them or to give themselves prestige and reputation. As Ellen White writes in The Desire of Ages, page 550, Christ was establishing a kingdom on different principles. He called men not to authority, but to service, the strong to bear the infirmities of the weak. Power, position, talent, education placed their possessor under the greater obligation to serve his fellows. And so to finish today, read John chapter 13, verses 1 through to 20. What example of leadership did Jesus give his disciples? What is Jesus still trying to teach us in this passage? How can we manifest the principle here in all our actions with others, in and outside of the church? John 13, beginning at verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," Peter said, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not every one was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. I am not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen. But this is to fulfill the passage of the Scriptures. He who shared my bread has turned against me. I am telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. Very truly I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me."